So almost exactly 20 years ago today, actually right about this moment, I was on Houston and Avenue A in New York City, and I was flagging down a taxi. It was a beautiful, sunny day in New York City. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and I was commuting to work over on 8th Avenue and 36th Street. And I flagged a taxi, and we started going down Houston and going across town, and I looked up and I saw this kind of black hole in the World Trade Center. And the cabbie, I said, "What happened? Like a plane went in there?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, wow, that's kind of strange. But I remember a plane had gone into the Empire State Building back in the day. So I thought, okay, that's a little weird. And we're driving along the streets, and we could see people getting out on the streets and starting to look and stare. And then he said, another plane just went in the World Trade Center. And then both of us knew at that moment that this was going to shift our reality forever. And started to try to call people on my mobile phone, whatever it was then. All the networks are down, and going across town, just watching this kind of smoke come out of these two towers, which were such a big part of New York City. You know, it's something that I remember when I got to New York in 1993, I would take the subway, the NR line from where I lived in the East Village down to the World Trade Center, and I would walk outside of the subway station, and I would look straight up at the World Trade Center as I crossed Liberty Street over to Liberty Plaza, where I worked at Bankers Trust. And I remember looking up thinking, oh my God, you know, and I did this every day for like a year. And even though New Yorkers try to look cool and they don't want to look like tourists, I still couldn't stop myself. It was just, they were so goddamn impressive, those buildings. And they were such an iconic part of New York City and maybe America. Whenever I would fly back to New York City and I was taking the taxi into Manhattan, I would always find the trade centers first. But okay, once I saw them, I knew I was home. They were always my North Star. And so they were really ingrained into the DNA of New Yorkers and maybe Americans, I don't know. And so that was a crazy day. I got to work. I started calling my friends who were on trading floors, and they said there's one going to the Pentagon, and it was just madness. And I think I went to the roof of the building and saw the South Tower go down. And then everybody in New York City was told to go home, but we couldn't use the subways because those were shut down. Again, we didn't know what the hell was happening. We didn't know if 50 more planes were coming into 50 more buildings. We didn't know what the hell was happening. And everybody walked home silently. And it was the strangest thing I've ever seen in New York City. I walked 36 streets and 8 avenues home, almost in silence, as we walked along the street, and everybody was kind of in a state of shock. I remember I went home, I went out, I got a bottle of vodka, I went to the roof deck of my building, and I watched the towers burn. And meanwhile, fighter jets are being scrambled down both sides of Manhattan, and it was just a crazy, intense time. The next month, my neighborhood smelled like jet fuel and dead bodies. There were troops that were mobilized to come in, and again, nobody knew what the hell was going on. It was just a complete shift. And that marked the worst year of my life. My girlfriend of 4 years had left me. My best friend from school had sacked me, or was about to sack me. And of course, it was all me. I had overdosed. You know, I was just fucking my whole life up. I was a 30-year-old boy, as they say in the movie Fight Club. And so, in some ways, that 9/11 day was a punctuation of me as one of my rock bottom points. And finally, I decided to get the hell out of Manhattan and come back to London. And I did in January of 2002. And I started cleaning my life up from there. Stopped doing drugs then, and started just cleaning my life up and rebuilding the man I would soon become. So 9/11 always means something special. I knew people that died in the buildings, people I'd worked with in finance. And I was there, and I'm glad I was there. I'm really glad I was in New York City for that. I know that might sound strange. Because it was important to be there and know what it was like. And it was interesting to see New Yorkers kind of come together, and, you know, this kind of gratitude and teamwork that was happening in New York City that you don't see very often. So that was a good feeling too. And maybe it all just pattern interrupted all of us and asked us what's important. I know it shifted a lot of people I knew and the decisions they made about life. And maybe it contributed to me finally deciding that enough was enough, and to put my stop loss order in on New York City and get the hell out, which is basically what I did. And again, rebuilt my life in London, and I couldn't, be happier with that decision. So just sending out, I guess, peace and love to, anybody who went through that, who lost people. It was a tragedy. It was a horrible event to happen, but also I think the resilience of New York City and Americans just shows that, we rebuilt it. And when you go down to that site, it's intense, man. Those holes, those pits with the water going in, it's really intense. You also get to see how small the footprint of those buildings was, and it was just such an impressive structure, and the new building is as well. So again, a shift. Obviously, a lot of things changed on the back of it, but that's what I remember about that day, and I will always remember what happened there. And it'll always be part of my story and my narrative somehow. So again, sending all sorts of support and love to the families and anybody who lost people. I know it's still a difficult thing for a lot of people there, and it was a very big moment for New York and for America and for the world. And still incredible to watch footage of that and watch what actually happened, and to remember what I remember of New York, and then the 12th of September and the 13th of September and all those days afterwards, when we had more building bomb threats, more threats of buildings coming in. Anthrax was sent to the city. I mean, it was crazy. It was just crazy. It just really it tested you mentally. And of course, we all made it through, and we all became better and stronger and smarter on the back of it. So anyways, life will always serve you up lots of tragedies. What's what you do with it that's the most important thing. How can you use it to overcome, to be more resilient, to learn, to become better? And that's the way these things are. I guess at the end of the day, life is always happening for you, not to you. So what can you do about that? What can you do with the circumstances? And I applaud everybody who pushed through and rebuilt on the back of it. So blessings, thanks, and hope you all are reflecting and remembering on this day today, and you can take something from it.